Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is not only the best Indiana Jones game that has ever been made, it's also one of the best adventure games ever made. It's on one level with games such as Uncharted or the Tomb Raider series. At the same time, it stays true to the original movies, especially when it comes to the voice acting. Troy Baker genuinely sounds like a young Harrison Ford, and when playing you'll forget that it's not Ford doing the voice here.
And George Lucas.
The exploration in Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is done masterfully and honestly the best part of this game. As it should be, of course. If the game had failed this aspect, it would have been an instant flop no matter how good the story or art direction is. You genuinely feel like Indiana Jones because the whole game has a strong adventure and mystery atmosphere. No matter where you are or how large any particular level is, they are all filled with loads of things to see and find. And this is made even better due to the game offering a special difficulty setting that lets you explore as much as possible on your own without it giving you any hints or at the very least a bare minimum. It's amazing because that's exactly how an adventure game should be. You want to go on an adventure and you want to find all kinds of weird or interesting stuff. But you also want to feel like you found these things rather than the game doing the job for you or being too hand-holding. There are, for example, buildings with hidden passages and the game tells or hints at you being able to find them, but how you do it is up to you. You have to figure it out using the clues that are spread around the map, and it just makes you feel like an actual explorer. What's even cooler is how the game offers you the option of using actual physical in-game maps. Not just some pause menu telling you where to go, but a map that Indy has to hold in front of himself and decide where to go this way. It's incredibly immersive because it makes so much sense to see this in a game about Indiana Jones. That's one aspect the movies, at least the original trilogy, did perfectly. There was a sense of mystery driving the story and it was unpredictable. You never knew what was going to happen next or what the adventure has in store for you.
You know how to fly, don't you?
No. Do you?
Oh no.
Because of how well designed each map is and how stacked full of details they are, it's almost impossible to play the game without taking it slow and looking through every possible corner. At least you'd be making yourself a huge disservice because Indy himself would have likely behaved that way. The game rewards this exploration as, aside from generally amazingly designed and cinematic set pieces, the game also offers plenty of collectibles. Collectibles that not only look great but also offer extra information, lore, or are simply Easter eggs or references to the movies, in particular the 80s trilogy. There are moments, especially early on, that even have a certain creepy and horror vibe that is very reminiscent of horror movies from the 1930s.
Very dangerous. You go first.
Which is fitting with the decade the game takes place in. It also recreates a few locations from the movies that you can fully explore, and it's simply amazing because of how immersive everything looks coupled with the fantastic graphics. The fact that the game takes place in the 1930s makes it also very unique as, unfortunately, there aren't that many games set within this time period. Recent years haven't seen a lot of period pieces be released in general, so it's amazing that The Great Circle does its best to bring that decade back to life. Most of my time playing, I was stopping just to take in the views or architecture. In a way, it almost feels like a mix between virtual tourism and time travel. There are so many references to events happening during that time, and you can find a lot of newspaper clippings with articles written on various world events, some of which also directly relate to other Indiana Jones movies and some that relate to the events in the game. The developers clearly poured a lot of effort into this, and despite the game not being a role-playing game, I was constantly feeling like like Indiana Jones and role-playing him in my head. One of the things that's also great is how there are always multiple passages in each map and different ways of how you can get by. It actually has a certain Dishonored feeling, and when I was playing I was constantly reminded of Dishonored to a point where the Great Circle made me want to replay the Dishonored games. Elements such as you having to either kill or knock out your enemies and then hide their bodies to avoid detection, noise being an important factor, and just how much detailed extra stuff is lying around the world. Plenty of notes, books, or magazines that give you extra information, abilities, or just nice collectibles.
Killing Nazis.
The levels are made in a way that offers you multiple passages, and it's not just something as simple as simply walking past the guards. Sometimes you have to first do multiple steps to get into certain areas, and you can easily miss them, just like in Dishonored. This is great because it adds replayability and makes you wonder what else you've missed. Most of the time, you'll be sneaking around and knocking people out or hitting them with your whip, and despite being able to use guns or rifles, you don't really feel the need to use them most of the time. They are a lot of fun when the opportunity arises, but Indy is not a soldier, and just like in the movies, it's better to avoid shooting around too much and leave it for desperate moments.
Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. You don't believe me.
The aesthetic of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is genuinely one of the best and most important parts of the game. It's faithful to the look the movies had, and it captures the feeling of being indie and exploring mysterious places perfectly. And I think that's really the most important aspect of the game, the mystery and how the game presents it. You want to feel like you're somewhere you shouldn't be, and that there is danger around every corner or step, which is in line with the movies, as Indy is constantly getting into trouble or causing chaos. The Great Circle understands this and manages to create such detailed environments that, at times, I was shocked at how good and realistic they look. Despite the game taking place in the 30s, just like the movies, it has a certain 80s feel and vibe that is also mixed with all the vintage noir and adventure inspirations the Indiana Jones franchise has. I mean, there's moments where you will walk towards a wall and you can see your shadow reflected in the light on the wall, and it just looks so damn good and cinematic. The entire game is extremely cinematic in general, to the point of recreating whole scenes from Raiders of the Lost Ark. While I wouldn't call this an interactive movie, it definitely does have elements from that genre, as it is very cutscene heavy and overall feels like one big movie. But that's not a bad thing, and I personally always loved interactive movie games anyway. However, my favorite part of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is just how detailed the world is. When you're exploring cities or buildings, you'll see lots of posters, magazines, or ads for propaganda or advertising purposes that are all made in the art style that was popular back then. In a way, it reminds me of BioShock due to how prominent the art style is. Whenever I replay BioShock, I don't do it for the story anymore, but for the visuals and the art of Rapture due to how unique it looks. It's the same with this game. No matter where you are, everywhere you look, you'll find something that looks stunning or interesting, and rather than just being set pieces, the game goes the extra mile and explains to you a lot of the backstory of various objects. And when it doesn't, the world will explain itself due to the way buildings and levels are designed. This game is the best Indiana Jones game that was ever made so far. None of the other games come even close to this level of immersion and attention to details.
You must choose. Choose wisely.
Discover real cola taste with just 1 calorie.
Angels bearing flaming swords, guarding the gates.
Another forged, Dr.